All right, let's dive into something a little different today.
Different how?
Well, we're going behind the scenes, behind those famous Graceland gates.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yep, Elvis, but with a twist.
I like twists.
This deep dive is all about a book called Elvis Memories Beyond Graceland Gates by Mary Jenkins,
Interesting.
published back in 1989.
Okay.
And it's all her personal memories of, working at Graceland.
Working for Elvis, wow.
Yeah, for Elvis and his family.
So not just like a fan's perspective, right?
No, not at all.
This is someone who saw the everyday Elvis.
Right, exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating. You might be thinking, another Elvis book.
Yeah, there are a few out there.
But here's the thing. Mary started working there way back in 1963.
63, that's well before...
Way before Elvis and Priscilla.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole different era of Elvis's life.
Most of what we see is like the king on stage, all the glitz and glamour.
But this is Elvis at home.
At home, yeah, seen through the eyes of someone who was like part of the furniture at Graceland.
That's a perspective we rarely get.
I know, right? Think about it. Most of what we know about Elvis is, filtered through all that fame, the movies, the music, the legends.
Yeah, but Mary saw him as like a boss, a friend.
A regular
guy who just happened to be incredibly famous.
Imagine that. You're 21 years old, just a girl from Memphis, and you land a job cooking for Elvis Presley.
Whoa, talk about surreal.
Her brother actually helped her get the job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was friends with Elvis's stepfather, Vernon.
Oh, that's a good connection to have.
And you know what's funny? Mary mentions in the book that Elvis's breakfast requests were pretty normal.
Normal? Like what, cereal and toast?
Haha, not quite, but pretty close. She said he'd asked for bacon and eggs, homemade biscuits,
Cinnamon boy at heart.
cream of wheat, and orange juice.
Kind of fascinating, isn't it? You'd think with all the possibilities, Elvis might have gone for something more, I don't know, extravagant?
Right, like a king's feast every morning.
Exactly. But maybe those simple Southern meals were like a way of staying grounded.
Yeah, maybe, amidst all that chaos of his life.
I mean, even superstars have cravings, right?
Totally. Maybe it was a taste of home,
That's a great point. Just a reminder of his roots.
And speaking of home, Mary's book also gives us this peek into a really pivotal time for Elvis.
Pivotal how?
Well, think about it. He's transitioning from this, ultimate bachelor.
To a family man.
Exactly, to a husband, a father.
And Mary was there to witness that whole transformation.
She was. She was even there when Priscilla first came to Graceland.
Wow, so she saw it all firsthand.
She talks about meeting Priscilla for the first time and being struck by her beauty.
Of course.
But also how down-to-earth she seemed.
I wonder how their relationship changed the whole dynamic at Graceland.
I know, right? Especially with Mary being part of the staff.
It must have been a fascinating time to be there.
Totally. I mean, Elvis is settling down, becoming a husband, soon to be a father.
That's a big shift.
Huge, going from rock and roll rebel to family man.
Yeah, that probably had a ripple effect on everyone around him.
And Mary was right there in the middle of it all.
Oh, and don't forget about Elvis's generosity.
Oh, yeah, that's a big theme in the book.
He was known for that, wasn't he?
He was, and it wasn't just those big, flashy gestures.
Like what?
Well, for example, he gave Mary a brand new white Ford as a gift.
Wow, just like that?
Just like that. But it was also the smaller things,
What do you mean?
Like Mary's mother was going through some financial struggles.
Oh, no.
And Elvis just gave her the money she needed.
Really? Just gave it to her?
Yeah, no strings attached.
That's incredible. It really shows that his generosity wasn't about showing off his wealth.
Right. It was about actually wanting to help people.
Especially those close to him.
Exactly. People he felt connected to. It really paints a picture of a man who, despite all the fame, had a really strong sense of loyalty.
And compassion.
Yeah, compassion. And Mary's anecdotes about daily life at Graceland, they just add another layer to that picture.
What do you mean? Like, what kind of things does she talk about?
Well, she talks about Elvis being a huge food lover, staying up late, always having friends and family around.
Sounds lively.
It was. She describes Graceland as this constantly buzzing place, especially when Elvis was home.
I bet. And she was cooking up all those delicious meals for everyone?
She was. She even shares some of his favorite recipes in the book.
Oh, really? Like what?
Lots of Southern cooking, fried chicken, meatloaf, banana pudding, and of course you can't forget about those peanut butter banana sandwiches.
Haha, of course not. But what's really interesting is that Mary's description of Graceland.
Before it became a museum?
Yeah, it's like a historical snapshot.
It really is. It changed us how Elvis actually lived and entertained.
It wasn't just a house, was it?
No, not at all. It was a reflection of him, his personality, his Southern roots.
His desire to create this welcoming space.
Exactly, for everyone he loved. And speaking of his Southern roots, it's funny, even with access to, the best chefs in the world.
He still loved Mary's cooking.
He did. She mentions how much he loved her Southern cornbread and cracker peas.
It makes you wonder if those flavors reminded him of his childhood.
Maybe, yeah. Simpler times, before all the fame.
Food has a powerful way of doing that, right? Connecting us to our past.
It really does. And for Elvis, who was constantly in the spotlight.
Those familiar flavors might have been a way of staying grounded.
And speaking of staying grounded, Mary doesn't shy away from the tougher times either.
Like what?
Well, she was there during Elvis and Priscilla's separation,
Oh, right.
and she saw firsthand how it affected him.
That must have been hard to witness.
It was. It's easy to forget that behind the dazzling smile, the iconic performances.
Elvis was still human.
He was. He experienced heartbreak, loneliness, just like everyone else.
Yeah, we often put celebrities on this pedestal.
And forget they have real feelings, too.
Exactly. Mary's book reminds us that fame and fortune don't shield you from those things.
They don't, from the ups and downs of life, of relationship.
From the pain.
And, Mary also provides these glimpses into Elvis's spirituality.
Really? I didn't know he was religious.
He was deeply religious. He had a strong connection to gospel music.
Interesting. That side of him doesn't always get as much attention.
No, it doesn't. But for Elvis, faith seems to have been this source of strength.
And solace, especially during those tough times.
It's a reminder that even those who seem larger than life,
They find comfort in those things.
yeah, in their faith, their spirituality.
It adds another dimension to our understanding of Elvis.
It does. He wasn't just this performer,
He was a complex person with beliefs and values that shaped him.
Absolutely. And those beliefs, they played a huge role in his life. So Elvis loved those simple meals, right? But he also had his moments of, let's say, dietary rebellion.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Mary talks about Elvis sneaking sauerkraut and hot dogs,
Sauerkraut and hot dogs.
much to the dismay of his doctor, Dr. Nick.
Haha, that's pretty funny.
It just shows he wasn't always following the rules.
Even when it came to his health.
Even then, it's a nice little reminder that he was human, just like us.
With cravings, indulgences.
Guilty pleasures. And speaking of indulgences,
What are you thinking?
Elvis loved his luxurious things.
He did.
Mary describes Graceland as being full of extravagant touches, custom-made furniture, state-of-the-art, everything.
He had a taste for the finer things in life.
He did, and some might see it as excess, maybe even a little disconnect from reality.
It's easy to judge from the outside.
Yeah, but I think it also shows his genuine love for beautiful things.
His desire to create this unique and memorable experience.
For himself and his loved ones. It's like he created his own little world at Graceland, his own kingdom.
A kingdom with blue suede everything.
Haha, pretty much. Mary describes the dining room with this glass-topped table, silver serving pieces, and these blue tablecloths.
Fancy.
Oh, yeah. And they were embroidered with Elvis's initials.
It sounds so elegant, yet so uniquely Elvis.
It really does. It's a snapshot of a bygone era.
When Elvis was at the top of his game.
And it could pretty much have anything he wanted.
It might seem over the top now, but you have to remember, that was his home.
His sanctuary.
His way of expressing himself.
Creating an environment that truly reflected him. And, one of the most fascinating things about Elvis was his ability to connect with people.
From all walks of life.
Exactly. His fans, other musicians, even the staff at Graceland.
He had this way of making people feel seen, appreciated.
That charisma, that warmth, it's a big part of why he was so beloved.
And it comes through in Mary's stories, too.
It does. She clearly felt a connection with him, a sense of loyalty that went beyond just being an employee.
Yeah, it's like she became part of the family.
In a way, she did. And that connection, that human touch,
It's what makes Mary's book so compelling.
it's not just a biography, it's a personal story.
A first-hand account of what it was like to be a part of Elvis's world.
And it reminds us that behind the legend, behind the music,
There was a real person,
a person who loved, laughed, struggled,
and ultimately touched the lives of so many.
in ways that continue to resonate today.
So as we delve deeper into Mary's story,
We're going to discover even more about Elvis.
about the man behind the myth,
The complexities, the contradictions.
that made him such a fascinating and enduring figure. Are you ready to go further behind those Graceland gates?
Let's do it. It's amazing, right? How Mary's book gives us this whole new perspective on Elvis.
It really does humanize him.
It makes him seem, I don't know.
More relatable.
Yeah. Relatable. She talks about these late night jam sessions happening at Graceland
I can only imagine the music.
and a constant stream of fascinating people coming and going.
Oh yeah, Graceland was the place to be back then.
I'm picturing this crazy mix of Hollywood glamour.
And down-home Southern hospitality.
Exactly.
Mary tells a funny story about meeting Danny Thomas.
Danny Thomas, the comedian.
Yeah, he was a frequent visitor, apparently.
Wow, I didn't know that.
She says he called everyone young lady.
No matter how old they were.
Nope. It's just a little detail, but it gives you a sense of his personality.
Those little details, they really stick with you.
They do. I wonder if Mary ever felt intimidated, being around all those celebrities.
Right. I mean, think about it. Elvis's inner circle was full of famous people.
Musicians, actors, you name it.
Did she ever mention feeling starstruck?
From what I gathered from the book, it seems like she was more focused on just, doing her job, making sure everyone felt welcomed and taken care of.
She wasn't there for the fame, she was there for Elvis.
Exactly. She was just Mary, the girl from Memphis who cooked for Elvis and his guests.
That's so cool. But still, it must have been such a surreal experience.
Oh, absolutely. To be surrounded by all that talent and fame, it's mind-blowing.
But her down-to-earth attitude probably served her well in that kind of environment.
It probably kept things grounded.
And it seems like Elvis really valued her loyalty and dedication.
He definitely seemed to have a deep appreciation for the people who worked for him.
Oh yeah, and speaking of loyalty, Mary's book is just filled with examples of Elvis's incredible generosity.
It really is heartwarming to read about.
Not just towards his staff, but like with friends, even strangers sometimes.
It's true. We talked about the car he gave her, but there's also that story about how he helped her mother.
When she was having financial troubles,
It speaks volumes about his character,
he just stepped up, no hesitation, and helped someone in need.
without expecting anything in return,
It shows real empathy.
and a desire to make a genuine difference in people's lives.
Exactly. It wasn't just about giving money either.
Right, there are stories about him helping people in all sorts of ways.
Now let's not forget about those legendary Christmas gifts he gave his staff.
Oh yeah, those were something else.
Everything from cars and jewelry to appliances and like huge cash bonuses.
Talk about a generous boss.
One year he even gave a staff member a Cadillac.
A Cadillac.
A Cadillac. I mean, where does someone even find that many Cadillacs to give away?
Only Elvis, I guess.
Only Elvis?
It's those larger-than-life gestures that become part of his legend.
Yeah, those are the stories that get passed down.
But what Mary's story shows us is that there was real heart behind those gestures.
He wasn't just trying to flaunt his wealth.
He genuinely wanted to show gratitude and appreciation for the people in his life.
It makes him seem so much more human.
And that's what's so valuable about Mary's perspective.
She helps us see Elvis as a real person, not just this untouchable icon.
Right, with flaws and struggles and moments of incredible kindness.
And speaking of struggles, Mary also provides glimpses into some of the challenges that Elvis faced.
Especially in his personal life.
Yeah, she was there for the marriage to Priscilla, the birth of Lisa Marie.
And unfortunately, their separation and divorce.
It must have been such a crazy time at Graceland.
A real emotional roller coaster for everyone involved.
Mary doesn't go into a ton of detail about it.
But you can sense the shift in the atmosphere.
She mentions that Elvis became more withdrawn, more introspective.
It's a reminder that even with all the fame and fortune in the world,
He still experienced heartache and disappointment, just like any of us.
exactly, it challenges that whole image of Elvis as this, untouchable god of rock and roll.
He was a man with real feelings, real emotions.
And Mary witnessed those vulnerabilities firsthand.
It makes you think about all the pressures he must have been under.
The weight of those expectations, the scrutiny of the public eye,
It's no wonder he sought solace in those quiet moments at home.
in his music and his spirituality.
I'm curious, did Mary talk about Elvis's relationship with Lisa Marie?
Oh, she does. She describes him as a doting father, completely smitten with his daughter.
Oh, that's sweet.
She remembered him spending hours playing with Lisa Marie, reading her stories, singing her songs.
It adds another dimension to our understanding of him as a family man.
It really does. Beyond all the stage persona, he was a father who cherished those precious moments with his child.
And as Lisa Marie grew older, did they remain close?
Mary's book focuses more on her own experiences, so she doesn't go into a lot of detail about how their relationship evolved over time.
That's understandable,
But she does mention how protective Elvis was of his daughter.
especially as she entered her teenage years.
It makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Imagine trying to raise a child in that kind of spotlight.
With a father as famous as Elvis Presley.
It must have been a constant challenge.
Balancing fame, family, and all the pressures of growing up in the public eye.
It's fascinating to think about.
And speaking of pressures, Mary also worked for Elvis during some of his most difficult years.
When his health started to decline.
It must have been hard for everyone to see him struggling.
Did Mary ever share any observations about how he was coping?
She definitely noticed a change in his energy levels.
He wasn't as active as he used to be.
And there were times when he seemed withdrawn, fatigued.
I can't imagine what that must have been like for those around him.
To witness someone so full of life struggling with his health,
Mary doesn't go into specifics about his medical issues.
but you can sense her concern for him.
She talks about trying to cook him his favorite meals.
Even if they weren't exactly doctor approved,
It sounds like she was just trying to provide comfort and support in any way she could.
it shows how much she cared for him.
She is a loyal, caring, wanting to make things a little bit easier.
For someone she clearly respected and admired.
And on top of the health problems, he was also facing all that pressure from his career.
It's easy to forget how demanding that life was.
The constant touring, recording, public appearances.
Did Mary ever mention how Elvis dealt with all that stress?
It's interesting because while he loved performing.
He thrived on that stage energy.
Mary observed that as his fame grew.
He became more guarded in his personal life,
He craved solitude, peace, and quiet.
which must have been almost impossible to find,
With all the attention he was getting,
especially when you consider his health issues.
it must have all added up.
It makes you wonder how he managed to keep going for so long.
His love for music probably played a big part.
His connection with his fans.
That desire to entertain, to share his gift with the world.
And Mary's book gives us a glimpse into that passion.
Those quiet moments when he wasn't on stage but still immersed in the music.
Listening to records, jamming with friends.
Those moments must have been a source of solace for him.
A way to escape the pressures and just reconnect with the joy of music.
And, speaking of joy,
What are you thinking?
Mary also talks about Elvis's sense of humor.
He did have a playful side,
She describes him as someone who could light up a room with his laughter.
even in the face of challenges.
It's one of the things that makes him so endearing,
That spark, that charisma, it shines through even in the darkest of times.
It's a reminder that there's always room for joy, for laughter.
For those moments of connection that make life worth living.
And that's what Mary's book captures so beautifully.
It's not just a dry recounting of events.
It's a story filled with emotions, with glimpses into the heart and soul of a legend.
A legend who, at the end of the day, was just a man.
With hopes, dreams, and struggles, just like the rest of us.
And as we continue our deep dive into Elvis memories beyond Graceland Gate,
We'll explore even more of those personal stories.
the moments that reveal the complexities and contradictions of Elvis Presley.
The man behind the legend. It's really incredible how Mary's story shows us these different sides of Elvis.
Yeah, the warmth, the humor, even when he was going through those tough times.
It's really poignant when you get to the last part of the book.
The final chapter of his life,
Exactly.
you can really feel the weight of what she went through.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just history, it's personal loss.
It is. It's clear that Elvis's death was a shock to everyone.
Even though his health had been declining.
Yeah. Mary was actually supposed to go on tour with Elvis just a few days later,
Wow, really?
but obviously that never happened.
Instead, she ended up staying at Graceland, helping with all the preparations for the funeral.
Yeah, it must have been surreal.
I can't even imagine the world's media, all the fans, the grief.
It must have been overwhelming for everyone.
And for Mary, it was personal grief on top of all that.
She talks about this constant stream of people coming to Graceland to pay their respects.
It wasn't just celebrities, was it?
No, not at all.
It was everyday people, too.
People who felt this deep connection with Elvis.
He really transcended music.
He did.
He became this cultural phenomenon.
A symbol of hope, rebellion, the American dream.
And Mary was there, witnessing it all.
The outpouring of love and grief. The realization that Elvis's legacy,
Well, it would live on long after he was gone.
it's powerful, isn't it?
The power of art, the way it connects us, even in the face of loss.
Mary also talks about how Elvis's father, Vernon, dealt with everything.
Oh, I bet that was heartbreaking for him.
She describes him as just utterly devastated.
Losing a child, it's unimaginable.
And Mary and the other staff, they really became his support system during that time.
It reminds us that behind all the fame, all the spectacle, this was still a family.
Yeah, a family dealing with an unbelievable loss.
Vernon had always been such a strong presence in Elvis's life.
I can't imagine what it must have been like for him to suddenly lose his son.
It makes you think about all the sacrifices he made to support Elvis's career.
Their bond was clearly incredibly strong.
And in a way, Mary became part of that family too.
Yeah, providing comfort and stability during that chaotic time.
It speaks volumes about the trust they had in her.
She wasn't just an employee.
She was someone they could lean on.
After the funeral, Mary actually stayed on at Graceland working for Vernon.
Wow, I can't imagine what that must have been like.
To be there, surrounded by all those memories.
Knowing that Elvis was gone,
It must have been so bittersweet.
filled with loss, but also a determination to keep his memory alive.
And Mary did that. She really became a caretaker of his legacy.
Sharing her stories with fans, keeping that human side of Elvis in focus.
It's almost like she became this bridge,
Between the Elvis we all knew on stage and the man she knew behind the scenes,
She helped to demystify him.
show the world that even legends are just people at the end of the day.
Mary also talked about the friendships she made with other Elvis fans.
After his death,
Yeah, it's like they formed this community.
bound by their shared love and grief.
And those connections, they became a source of comfort and support for her.
It's incredible how Elvis continued to bring people together, even after he was gone.
It's a testament to the power of his music, his persona,
He created a community that extended far beyond his lifetime.
and that community is still going strong today.
Decades later, his music still connects people from all over the world.
It's really remarkable.
Mary's book, it gives us such a unique piece of that legacy.
Her personal memories, they offer this perspective that you rarely find.
It's like a window into his soul.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Elvis memories beyond Graceland gates,
What stands out to you the most?
what do you think Mary's story teaches us about Elvis, about fame, about life?
I think it reminds us that behind every icon, there's a person.
A real person with all their complexities and vulnerabilities.
Mary's book gives us access to that side of Elvis,
We see him not just as the king,
but as a son, a father, a friend,
human being who, despite his extraordinary life,
faced many of the same challenges we all do.
it's a powerful message,
It encourages us to look beyond the surface,
to see the humanity in everyone.
regardless of their status or fame,
And it makes you appreciate people like Mary.
who share their stories and help us connect with the people behind the legends.
It's been a fascinating journey, exploring Elvis's life through Mary's eyes.
I definitely recommend her book to anyone who wants to get to know the man behind the music.
The man who continues to inspire and intrigue us all these years later.
Well said.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring Elvis's world.
Through his music, his films, the countless stories that have been shared,
And if you're looking for a truly unique and personal perspective,
Mary Jenkins's Elvis Memories Beyond Graceland Gates is a must-read.
thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.
And keep the music playing.